Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Eaterberg, and today I am bringing you an interview with Jamie O'Rourke, director of the short film Calf, which is currently eligible for the 97th Academy Awards. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Jamie O'Rourke is a Dublin-based writer and director whose first film, Scrap, was nominated for an IFTA in 2022 and screened in competition at the 2023 Clermont-Ferrand International Film Festival. He is currently in development on his first feature and joins me today to talk about his most recent short film, Calf, which is qualified for the 97th Academy Awards. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for having me.
So your film tackles a very poignant topic, but does so in a way that makes the viewer almost question what they're seeing until the very end when all the cards are on the table. Where did you come up with the idea for this amazing film?
So the idea came out of, I worked on a documentary in 2018, and essentially what it was interviews. The foundation of it was interviews with 9 women who had fled to domestic abuse shelters at one point in their life. And they were recounting some of their experience about being in an abusive relationship, how they got out of it eventually. And just, everybody's story is different, obviously. And that documentary was kind of coincided roughly around the same time that the Domestic Violence Act of 2018 was being introduced into Ireland. And really what that act was covering was, up until that point, abuse centered around the physical, right? What was being introduced in that act was some of the other often unthought of aspects of domestic abuse or any abuse really, which can be the emotional, the mental, and the coercive elements. So coercion being legislated as a criminal act. And that was really where I started thinking about the idea and where I became more familiar with statistics. I mean, hearing those accounts, those stories are very harrowing, but it also opened up, there was a European-wide study around the incidence rates of domestic violence in Ireland and other European countries. And I was shocked at how high they were. 1 in 4 women in Ireland has experienced some form of domestic abuse from a former or current partner. So those are incredibly high numbers. That's just some of them.
Yeah.
I encourage anyone to go on to womensaid.ie to familiarize themselves even further. There's but it was in and around those two things that the idea for the film started to come about, essentially.
And talk a little bit about the title of the film. It's simply called Calf, which obviously literally refers to the cow that we hear about being talked about, about to give birth by the characters in the film. Why did you decide to focus on that element of the film for the title when the story, doesn't readily relate to that as you're just speaking about?
Yeah, for a number of reasons. I'll talk about maybe the first thing in regards to the cow is that essentially there's a counter narrative there when the first shot we see is what looks like a cow in labor and in distress, and we can see from their stomach that it might be an abnormal birthing. And then when we enter the house, on the face of the family situation appears very normal, a family at breakfast.
Right.
And by the end of the film, those two things have reversed. And that the birthing has revealed itself to be perfectly normal as it is. I've been on farms before, I've seen calvings, and it's perfectly normal, but I think it was in that I wanted to kind of reflect something that's very regular in these situations, currently are now, but even more so in the past, where this type of thing is kept hidden away from the public eye.
Right.
It's going on in the home. It's not to go outside. It's not to be talked about. And I think to go further than that, the two main characters in the film, Caelainn, mother and daughter, I think one is very representative of old Ireland and one is more maybe representative of newer modern Ireland, where we meet a lot of these things more head on. A lot of the issues in society we might, there's still a plethora of issues, and just because we talk about them doesn't mean they're solved. but it is a healthier way to approach them,
Right.
In that sense, also we set it in a farm. I've been on farms. I don't come from a farming background directly, my parents, but one of my parents does. And I've been on farms through various different reasons throughout my life. And I guess setting it on a farm in the middle of nowhere in a remote place was one part of, kind of trapping the audience into this situation along with the family. Really, trying to, and that's part of why we kind of see so much of the landscape and see, I guess, how remote and how trapped this family are in this place. And I guess that adds somewhat to the tension. And also then, Koch delivering the calf, it shows the responsibility that she takes for her family. It's kind of a metaphorical sense, but it also, it's a metaphorical in the rebirth sense, I think. So there's kind of a lot of reasons I drew that in. That's a couple of them. Like, I mean, in multiple some cultures, cows are symbolic of other things, are really kind of, represent certain things like motherhood and can be revered figures, so there was small element of that coming in. So there was a lot of thought that went into why it was included, but those were some of the main reasons.
Yeah, very, very simple title with a lot of potential meanings behind it. I like it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it a moment ago, obviously it takes place on this remote dairy farm. We have an accident that occurs early in the film. I assume a lot of it was shot on location, especially obviously the outdoor scenes were. What sort of challenges did you experience shooting this on a location like that in terms of the production overall?
It actually, it solved a good few problems. There's always problems present in this industry that we're in. It is one big problem to solve, I think. With
you're not a director, you're a problem solver, right?
It's a house of little problems that all add together to create one big problem. But I think that's why it's enjoyable is you all work together to solve it. But with respect to the location, I think we were very lucky because we shot for 4 days and it was a single location, except for one unit move. The bathroom was in a different house.
Okay.
But everything else was on the same farm, and it was a recently retired farmer. So it wasn't. The reason why that was really important to us was because an active farm is a very dangerous place. And an inactive farm is a dangerous place, but an active farm, lots of coming and goes, lots of machinery. But at the same time, we didn't want a farm that felt like it was gone to seed either. It was actually left. So we were very lucky that the producer's partner's father had just recently retired. So it's his farm. And Robert and Marion Ruddle were their names, and they very kindly allowed a team in for 4 days, and it was incredible. So the house, the farm, everything is in a single location. That really was the only way we could do all of this in 4 days,
Sure.
So it actually solved a lot of problems really than created more. But there's always challenges filming on location. You've got the health and safety aspect. You are on a farm. We had tractors, we had machineries, we had live animals. But on balance, I think it solved a lot more problems than it created, really.
That's always nice. Now you talked a little bit about your two main characters, which I thought both of them were wonderful, both the mother and the daughter. Talk a little bit about the casting process. Was that something where you cast them together? Did you find them separately and then try and kind of work on the interactions later?
Yeah, Isabel Connolly played Koch, the daughter, and Kate Nikianik played Anya, the mother. And I was extremely lucky because casting can quite often be very difficult, but I wanted both of those from the start. Even when I pitched for funding for the film, they were both in my treatment deck as the people I wanted to play these characters. I'd seen them before in various things, and I was very lucky that they both agreed to it. It was during COVID that we cast and prepped this film, so we didn't get to meet in person ahead. We did have Zooms where we did a bit of rehearsal and we had a lot of chats, and I don't like to over-rehearse actual lines. I like to have a read-through and make sure we all know our lines. But in terms of rehearsal, I prefer to take it away from the film, maybe do other things to just more about being comfortable trying and communication between myself and the actors. but they're incredible, you know, and we were very lucky to get to work with both Isabel and Kate, and they brought so much. I think that's part of it. You bring a back story for your characters, an overall story for the film. You talk about motivations and different things, and then it's, you know, the actor goes away and brings so much in a really good situation. When you have the right situation, I think they go away and they develop and they show you stuff that you maybe weren't looking for, weren't intending, but is ultimately way better, you know. And that was certainly the case on this, you know. So very lucky to get to work with both of them. Both of them went above and beyond. Like, for a short film, we don't get a huge amount of budget, so they're doing it for far less than they normally get.
Sure.
Isabel was on a TV show in Italy, and they changed their schedule because of COVID, and it overlapped with our dates, and she actually fought to get the dates back to come and work on a short film. So I'm forever grateful to her for that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really appreciated really the daughter, how in certain spots very understated her performance was, and you know, she really sold everything and made you know, really question what's she doing, why is she doing, you know, what she's doing.
Yeah, she's incredibly, I think that's very difficult. You know, we work in an industry where it's hard to know what the line is, what is, you know, and I think her performance is far more powerful for that subtlety and that nuance. Yeah. You know, I think that's the hardest thing for an actor to be comfortable doing, is not over performing, not, you know, finding that line, finding the thing about, actually, Colin Hogan, our cinematographer, put it best on the first day of filming, where like 2 hours in, we'd done a few shots, a few setups, and he just turned to me quietly and just goes, "You just believe everything she does." And that is something that holds true for those 4 days, is every time she'd give you something different, but you'd always believe it. And I think it's about how an actor taps into their character and how far they go into it. And she's just incredible at doing that, finding something real and authentic, you know.
Absolutely. You mentioned there your cinematographer. I have to compliment him as well. Some of the beautiful shots throughout the film, and I really like how there was a variety. You had certain instances where the camera is at a distance and you're just kind of watching things play out in a very still shot, and things are happening off in the distance, almost like we're watching from afar. But then there's other moments, thinking you mentioned the bathroom scene earlier, you're right in there with the characters and it's very, very intimate. What was kind of your goal with balancing things and presenting things in those two different ways?
Yeah, I mean, it was very considered ahead, a lot of prep with Colin Hogan, as I said, and I've since done a couple more films with Colin, short films, and he's incredible to work with ahead of time. That's where I like to make the film.
Sure.
I don't really like leaving things to the day. Often that, I don't mean like I don't like to change things. Quite often we can if we find something better, but I like talking about what we're planning to do well ahead of the filming, and that was certainly the case with Calf, and how we saw it. And yes, I mean, partly going that wide was to introduce the landscape as an almost character in and of itself. One of the, I hate to say the word tricks, but you know, if this was a very kind of kitchen sink drama from start to finish, which we intentionally didn't want it to be, we set it up almost like a genre film at the start with intention, is that we want to give the audience potentially an ulterior motive behind what Koch's decision making is happening as it's happening. We wanted it to feel almost like real time. I know it's longer than real time, you know, it's 50 minute film, but we want it to feel almost like it's happening in real time in some way. So we're kind of trapped in that tension. That tension is, we grip you and then we try kind of hold it for the duration of the film and release it at the end. And I think, you know, that was really what we were doing there, and what we were attempting to do there.
Excellent. Now, I know the film is already Oscar qualified, but are there any upcoming screenings, anything where people can check out the film if they're interested and haven't seen it yet?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a screening in a festival called Newport Beach in North LA, I believe. That's not this weekend, but the weekend following. We have screenings in the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival. That's also in 2 weeks, I think, not this weekend, but the weekend following. So that's New York, LA. And then we have a couple of upcoming screenings in the UK, Norwich, Bolton just happened, one in London. And there's where I think there's definitely more festivals. I just don't have them to hand.
Sure.
But those are probably some of the main ones. Oh, St. Louis, it's playing in St. Louis as well, in Missouri, in
Excellent.
St. Noam.
We'll put some links to those where people can check it out if they're in the area. So,
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more if there's more coming. No, I have a couple of questions not specifically related to the film, but before I move on, is there anything else you want to touch on about CAF?
I mean, one thing that I would say about Ireland is that, and this is relative to CAF as well, is that we're very lucky here in that every year there's about 25 to 30 funded short films made by organisations like Screen Ireland, Virgin Media, the local county councils, national talent academies. And I think there's this in some parts of the world, there's this thing that, maybe we punch above our weight in the amount of filmmakers we have that go out into the world, or writers or filmmakers. And I think there's this impression that it just comes naturally or it's innate. And I think there's a little bit of that, but, one of the main reasons is that organizations like that really support grassroots filmmakers, really fund them at emerging level, give them money to make short films so they can make mistakes, develop their voice, develop their craft. So CAF was made by a co-fund with Virgin Media under the Discovers program and Screen Ireland. And I just think it's important to point that out to one, it's because we're in their debt, for helping develop, because I'm not sure what way it works in the US, but I think for the most part it's private investment, isn't it? There's not a whole lot of...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and it varies, from country to country how it's set up. But, I think that's one reason why we kind of have an abundance of filmmakers going out into the world every year is 25. If you think of 25 new filmmakers making a short film every year, that's a huge coming out, So.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for mentioning those. Those are really good points. Now, this might be the hardest question I asked, but if you had to pick your top 3 films of all time, what would they be?
Okay. Wow. I didn't see of all time. Does it have to be all time? Could I do the most recent?
You can do the most recent, whatever. Yeah, take it however you want.
Okay, I can definitely do that. Sure. So Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer's film.
Yep.
It blew me away. I thought that was incredible. Alice Roriker made a film called La Chimera. It's an Italian-English film that stars Josh O'Connor and Isabella Rossellini is in it. I was blown away by that. I just think she really played with the form, and it felt like there was a traveling Romany group passing through town telling stories of 1,000 years old, and that just felt like this old story that I'd never heard before. And then what else? After Sun, Charlotte Wells, that film. Geez, every time I watch it, it just gets you. I've watched it 3 times now, and I have to definitely be alone when I watch that film. Those 3 films blew me away in the last couple of years.
Wonderful. I actually just saw After Sun for the first time over the summer and absolutely loved it.
Oh, has you in bits, doesn't it? It just gets you down here somewhere. Suddenly there's something in both your eyes. And
Yep. Now, if you could invite any 3 movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be?
Characters, so not actors.
Not the actors, the characters.
That makes some sense. Oh God. Okay.
There's always a tough one for folks.
Okay. Oda Mae Brown would be the first person. Whoopi Goldberg's character in Ghost. Because who doesn't want somebody a medium who can...
Sure. She could certainly liven things up a little bit.
There you go. That one's probably out of left field. I'm trying to think who else. Marge Gunderson from Fargo.
Okay.
This is a dinner. This is definitely a dinner. And Phil from Groundhog Day. There you go.
Okay. All right. Good eclectic bunch. There'd be some crazy stories from that dinner, I'm sure.
I'm sure there was. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, do you have any books you could recommend that you've read recently or favorites that you read often? They could be fiction, nonfiction, and don't have to be related to movies.
Okay. Yes, I definitely do have books I can recommend. What could I read? Republic of Shame is an amazing book. It's by a woman called Caelainn Hogan, and it centers around the mother and baby homes situation in Ireland. It's non-fiction, and I don't know if you know much about the mother and baby homes in Ireland, but essentially unwed mothers used to be sent to these back in, not until, like up until the 90s, really. It's not that long ago when they stopped, but they fell out of fashion in the 90s. But unwed mothers, because of the grip that the Catholic Church had over Ireland, a lot of unwed mothers were sent here and oftentimes forced to give up their babies, which were oftentimes adopted out of the country for donations. And Caelainn Hogan's book is a really, really good account of that. I just read Making the Future recently by Noam Chomsky, really good. And then trying to think, another Irish writer, Kevin Barry is a great Irish writer, and he has a book of short stories called There Are Little Kingdoms. And he creates amazing new worlds. I'd recommend. Not like sci-fi or anything like that, just a maybe slight deviation from very Irish kind of characters and language, but very good. Yeah, those 3 books I'd recommend them.
Excellent. Well, we'll put some links to those in the show notes so people can check them out. And lastly, before we wrap up, do you have any other projects that you have lined up going forward? And also, where can people follow you on social media to keep tabs on that?
Yes, so I have another short film that was very kindly funded by Screen Ireland called The Afters, and it is a social absurdist, an absurdist social horror, I want to say, about a guy that goes, a working class guy that gets trapped at an elitist wedding that seems to go on forever. It seems to be in a never-ending loop, and it's kind of about social anxiety, class, and capitalism.
Sounds good. I always love a good time loop movie.
And then it's definitely a bit more into a genre film than I have done to date. It was great fun to shoot, but we're currently in the edit. We're nearly finished the edit, so hopefully sometime early next year we'll have it boxed off. And then I don't really have many socials anymore. I'm still on Instagram, so Jamie_O_O'Rourke. And After Film is on there as well. And that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, we'll put links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for sharing the film. I truly enjoyed it and appreciated hearing some of the stories of what went into making the film.
Cheers, Jonathan, and thanks for having me. It's always nice to get to meet people like yourself and get to talk about various projects and films. So, thank you.
Thank you again to my guest today, Jamie O'Rourke. His latest short film, Calf, is eligible for the 97th Academy Awards. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eaterberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eaterberg. Please be sure to come back for my next episode, where I'll be speaking with Sarah Block, director of the short film Trouble. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.